We are still coming down from a big sports weekend in our state with two headlines, you could say, on opposite ends of the field. After the BYU football game, Baylor fans praised BYU's energy in the stands, some saying it was so loyal and so blue, it impacted the outcome of the game. After Utah State's loss against Weber State that same day, head coach Blake Anderson called out Aggie fans, saying teams deserve support even after the tough losses. Well, if being a good fan leads to good sportsmanship, then we want to be good sports fans and raise good sports fans too. Sports psychologist Dr. Tom Golightly is joining me to help us do just that. Hey, Tom, do you have your voice back?
I do, just barely though.
Just barely.
It's been just recovering.
In time for this conversation, which I'm actually looking forward to. And can I tell you why? It seems like whenever we talk about sportsmanship as it relates to fans or spectators, it's usually because of this crazy one-off headline, right? Where fans went crazy, lost their cool. We saw some headlines of that nature this weekend as well. And it always frustrates me because I feel like that definitely demonstrates the minority. Like, most people are good humans on the stands and we understand kind of the lines and the boundaries. To me, this topic sort of elevates that same conversation. Do you believe that being a good fan kind of marches us toward good sportsmanship ultimately?
I do. And, you know, it's been interesting to follow some of the stories around fan behavior the last couple of weeks. We've had some really good and some really, really bad, like nationally bad, right?
Sure.
And so it does kind of color our experience to be able to go into an environment, have a great energy about it, and have it be positive, which is kind of this flow, eudaimonia kind of like experience. And I've had some experiences in stadiums where I've walked away feeling like, oh, that wasn't very fun. I wanted to go have fun, and that was hard. Right. And I do think it does promote how we treat each other, not just in the stands, but on the field.
Yeah. And here at Studio 5, we say this often. We really only care about the headlines that affect our heart and home. I shouldn't say that so finitely, but you understand where I'm going. We're looking at this through a parenting lens. We're saying, what are our children learning from our behavior and from, you know, those who are sitting in the stands, and how can they be good sports, good fans sitting in the stands as well? You've got some standout values that will lead to that good sportsmanship behavior that we want to promote, we want to embody. The first, you say we have to remember, it's not an I win, you lose situation.
It's really easy to kind of set up this I'm a winner, you're a loser thing when we're at a competition, right? And we should want to go and cheer for our teams, love our teams, be passionate, and rabidly be a part of that. But that doesn't have to turn into hating the other side. And I think it's important to kind of note that we can be positive about our team without being negative towards the other team. And even that lighthearted ribbing that we sometimes engage in, people might not take that as joking, and it can be a thing that creates defensiveness that can escalate a situation. But my son, even driving down to this first game this year in the stadium, he talked about a core memory of his 10 years ago. He was 7 at the time, and we were at the BYU-Utah game, and we had Utah fans sitting right behind us, which as a parent, you're like, oh, great, how's this going to go?
You're like, oh, we're wearing all blue. This is comfortable.
Exactly. And BYU played terribly that day. It was a miserable day to be a BYU fan, but the fans right behind us cheered loudly for the Utes and were so gracious and kind and involved my son, gave him candy, gave him a little bit of their cougar tail, you know, all of those things. And he walked away as a 7-year-old knowing I can cheer, but I don't have to hate. And he still cheers that way. And he was so impacted by that as a youngster.
Yes.
And we have that ability as fans to kind of promote pro-social behavior in stands.
I love that. I love that. A couple quick minutes left. You want us to be self-aware of intensity. And I've told you before, I'm not super sporty, glad we can still be friends, but I surprised myself sitting on the sidelines of my niece's soccer game many years ago. And the emotion that comes out, even if you're not hyper invested or even hyper aware of what's happening, it took me by surprise.
Well, we all have reactions, and sometimes we have challenges to managing our emotions under the best of conditions. But remember that we're choosing to be there. And usually we're choosing to be there because we want to have a good time. And that fans from the other side are the same. They chose to be there because it's going to be fun to cheer and have that energy.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be toward anybody. It doesn't have to be too in your face. It doesn't have to be directed toward another side.
Right.
Just cheer and be aware of how that's coming across from an energy level.
All right, a quick minute, but I love this final point you're drawing our attention to. Athletes are humans.
So what we saw, especially at the end of the BYU game, was teammates reaching out to teammates, right? And I think we often forget that these are real people, and they're risking a lot on a very, very visible stage. And because of wins and losses, advanced statistics, fantasy leagues even, we kind of dehumanize these athletes and think that's not a real person under that helmet or in that jersey.
Right.
But they have the courage to fail, and on that scale, and opponents, when we come together after the game, we're actually honoring and respecting that courage. And whether we win or lose, it's really important to acknowledge the preparation and that courage of your opponent.
Yes.
And fans can do that too. And these are real people with real reactions, real ups and downs, experiencing that on the field. And I think it was brilliantly shown this weekend how we can support that.
It was, and I hope parents, and I think most parents are pointing out those examples and having these kind of conversations in their homes, because I think it's a perfect example that illustrates the purpose of this topic, which is your 7-year-old remembered those impressions, and no doubt they'll stick with them on the field and off as we continue to try to raise good little humans. Tom, thank you so much. We appreciate your insight as always.
Thanks for having me, Brooke.